Jean Schnupp here. Welcome to another of the Savvy Sightseer video vacation series. This time I will take you on a journey not to where I've been, but to where I'd like to go. Everyone has a bucket list of things you'd like to do when the time is right and you can afford it and circumstances make it possible. My list, of course, involves travel. This new series will flesh out the places on my list so when it comes to going, I'm all set. I will know more about the place and why it interests me so I can be on the next plane out with my list of not to miss sights. One place I've wanted to go to for a long time is New Zealand. I have many friends who have been and loved every minute of it and very kindly gave me permission to use their pictures in this program. Mainly, I've balked at the amount of flying. About 20 hours when you factor in layover and airport wait times from New York. But in doing some extra research, I've found that it can be mitigated with careful planning of layover points. Cost is another factor, but I've now accumulated enough miles to fly round trip for a pittance. So then it's on to planning more about what I would like to do and see there, and I've definitely found a gem of a destination. New Zealand identifies itself as the youngest country on Earth, since it was the last major landmass to be discovered. Two islands, simply named North and South, along with about 600 small islands, comprise the country of nearly 5 million people. While the island nation is relatively small, roughly the size of the state of Colorado, it is packed with geological, geographical, and cultural diversity. The two main islands have very different personalities. The north is more populated, with nearly 3/4 of all of the residents, though it is smaller than its southern sisters. North Island has milder temperatures that are fueled by geothermal and volcanic sources, while South Island is more rugged, dotted with fjords, and home to the Southern Alps. Because they are so different, this program focuses just on the North Island, or Northland. Check back at another time for a Savvy Sightseer video vacation to the South Island. The Dutch were the first Europeans to sight the island in 1642 and officially put it on the map, though the captain and cartographer Abel Tasman never actually stepped on land. He christened it New Zealand after a province in the Netherlands called Zeeland, or Sealand. The honor of going ashore later went to Captain James Cook in 1769, and he promptly claimed the territory in the name of King George III. Cook quickly learned, though, that it was not uninhabited. The Maori tribes from Polynesia had moved in hundreds of years earlier. They had a different name for their homeland, Aotearoa, meaning land of the long white cloud. European settlers started coming in force in the 1800s, and today the Maori make up only about 17% of the country's overall population. The Pakaihe, or European heritage New Zealanders, account for nearly 80%. Currently, a movement is underway to restore more of the Maori heritage and language, with major companies like communications giant Vodafone replacing NZ in their corporate name with the Maori country name. Both Maori and English is spoken in New Zealand, but the latter sounds very different from typical British. For mystery crime drama fans, a fun way to get an ear for the accent is to watch one of the region's very popular series called Broken Wood Mysteries, which you can get from the library. Since you can already tell I'm absolutely awful at Maori, I'll put most of the true language names on the slides, and instead we'll use the translated versions in the program. Come along with me now to check out the North Island and see if you agree that I'm right to put this at the very top of my bucket list. We're going to start in Auckland, the largest city of the North Island. It's considered a city of volcanoes, given it's built over the dormant remains of about 50 of them. Some city roads are paved and historic buildings built with what was then a plentiful product, volcanic basalt lava stones. The city's main drag is Queen Street, where ultra-modern buildings share space with ones that were built in the Victorian era. One of the famous longtime residents who roamed these streets was Sir Edmund Hillary, mountaineer who died in Auckland in 2008. Auckland did a brief stint as the island nation's capital. In 1841, New Zealand's first governor, William Hobson, established it as the colony's capital. naming it after his former commander, Lord Auckland, then Viceroy of India. It was actually the fledgling nation's second capital in less than a year, taking the honors away from a city farther north. Although the capital was again shifted farther south to the more central Wellington in 1865, Auckland has remained a major gateway to New Zealand and is a prosperous port city with a very busy international airport. Auckland lies on an isthmus. That's a short strip of land, just over a mile long, connecting two larger bodies of land with water on either side. On Auckland's east is the South Pacific Ocean. The Tasman Sea is to its west. At Viaduct Harbor, you can see why Auckland is called the City of Sails. Reportedly, 1 in every 4 households has a boat, and it is from here that the world's most prestigious and oldest regatta, the America's Cup, is set to take place in March 2021. As of this filming, that of course is still a question mark. Rising well above the city is the 1,076-foot tall Sky Tower. It is New Zealand's tallest structure, and the transmitter at the top broadcasts more TV and radio stations than any other in the world. It is the tallest manufactured structure in the southern hemisphere and has been designed to withstand winds of up to 125 miles per hour. Opened in 1997, it has become a prime spot from which to get an overview of the city, to get a lay of the land before striking out on foot to explore. From one of its 3 observation levels, starting at just under 600 feet above the street, on a clear day you can see up to 50 miles away. The 360-degree revolving dining restaurant is up at about 620 feet. The brave can take a real leap of faith from a bungee cord at about 630 feet up, or just wander about on the 4-foot wide glass floor for a skywalk. A full body harness and overhead safety line keeps you safe as you step right to the edge with no railings or plexiglass. You just know I'm going to take their word for it and not give it a try myself. To get impressive views of the city, but keep your feet firmly on terra firma, you can go to one of the many parks that were created by past volcanic activity. Over at the top of One Tree Hill, the largest of the extinct volcanoes and the site of one of the earliest Maori settlements, you find one of the best lookout points. A monument has long since replaced the lone pine that once topped the summit, and is important in its honoring of both the Maori people and John Logan Campbell, one of the first European settlers of the area and a leading administrative figure in the mid-1800s. In 1901, he donated the land at One Tree Hill to the people of New Zealand, and in his will, he provided funding for the monument, saying he envisioned a towering obelisk uprearing heavenward in memoriam to the great Maori race. A bronze statue facing Campbell's grave was added, marking the first time a statue in the form of a Maori figure was erected in Auckland. Another prime viewing spot is Mount Eden, the highest volcanic cone in Auckland at 643 feet high. It has a 164 deep crater. You can get a panoramic view of both coasts, since this area is one of the narrowest parts of New Zealand. Developed around the cone of a nearby extinct volcano, the Domain Park, known as Pukekohe, is Auckland's oldest and largest at nearly 200 acres and provides a very nice respite from city hustle. During the Second World War, it was used as a campground by American troops. Enjoyed year-round, a highlight of the park is its winter garden, which was designed in the early 1900s. 2 barrel-vaulted Victorian-style glass houses offer very different experiences. One is heated and shows off lush tropical and heat-loving plants, while the other rotates an ever-changing display of rare and spectacular plants according to the season. In between the 2 greenhouses is an extensive courtyard and sunken pool. Together with majestic marble statues, it's no wonder this is a popular backdrop for wedding pictures. The park is also home to the National War Museum, built in 1929 to commemorate the country's involvement in World War I. It's been expanded to recognize the fallen of all wars that New Zealand soldiers have served in. It also tells the story of the country, its place in the Pacific, and its people. Moving out of Auckland north about 3 hours is one of the Northland's most scenic coastal views, the Bay of Islands. You can see why the original capital was on its fringe, though it was the bawdiness in early days from all those sailors coming and going that cost it the prestigious role in less than a year. You really can't have a capital city in a region nicknamed the hellhole of the Pacific. Auckland presented as a much more suitable option, and off went the governing agencies. Today, the Bay of Islands and neighboring towns like Russell have anything but raucous clientele. Little spots around the bay are referred to as boutique towns. There's about 150 isles that pepper the bay, an inlet of the South Pacific Ocean. Getting out on the water is a must here. Pods of dolphin, along with a wealth of marine wildlife escort tour boats out to Piercy Island, one of the most visited sites in the bay. What sets it apart is not just sheer cliffs that rise nearly 490 feet out of the sea, but rather a unique outcome from erosion that carved a spectacular 52-foot high hole right through it. Navigating the so-called hole in the rock is an especial delight for tourists and jet boaters alike. If you are very lucky, you might spot hiding out on or around one of the bay's small islands my favorite creature, the penguin, and an especially beautiful one at that, because these little guys are blue and are the world's smallest penguin, standing barely 1 foot tall and weighing in at about 2 pounds. They are vulnerable to several types of predators, so are rarely seen on land, and generally only come ashore under the cover of darkness as a tightly contained group called a raft for how they look packed together. Mainly they come ashore between May and June to breed in underground burrows, between rocks, or in caves. Typically, the blue penguins deliver 2 eggs, which are cared for equally by both mom and dad. The chicks hatch between September and December and weigh in at barely an ounce. Their plumage starts to go all brown at first and then turns to blue after their first molt, when they shed their baby feathers and develop a slate blue back with a white belly. Perfect camouflage for blending in against the lighter water as seen from below and the darker as seen from above. There's plenty to enjoy on land at the Bay of Islands as well. New Zealand's history changed dramatically at the Waitangi Treaty grounds. Hostilities had broken out between native Maori and European settlers to such an extent that in 1840, Captain William Hobson was dispatched to put an end to it. 50 Maori chiefs and representatives of the British Crown gathered to debate a proposed truce. Eventually, a treaty was signed by Maori leaders from around the island. It's been a contentious arrangement, though. Some believe the Maori were misled into thinking they'd be sharing equal rights with the settlers, and that they were leasing, not giving away their lands. The Treaty House is New Zealand's most visited historic building, which had been the home of James Busby, Britain's assigned jurist in New Zealand, who was instrumental in writing the final treaty. This House of Assembly is a beautifully carved meeting place that was added to the grounds in 1940 to mark the centenary of the signing of the treaty. It reflects the Maori stories and carving styles of iwi, or tribes from across the country. Performers demonstrate traditional weapons to explain how they were once used in battle, and along with each of the songs and live demonstrations is an explanation about the role of the song or action in history. Heading farther north onto the peninsula at Northland's tip is a sacred forest of kauri trees. These giants of the forest live for thousands of years, making them some of the world's oldest trees. The largest kauri tree in New Zealand, at 46 feet around and 167 feet tall, is Taine Mahuta, seen here. It is rightly called the Lord of the Forest and is about 2,000 years old and still growing. The tree was named for a Maori god, the basis of their creation myth. He is said to have separated earth and sky and brought this world into being. He's also credited with creating the first humans, as well as decorating the heavens and bringing baskets of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding down from the sky to the people. But even at his lengthy age, the Mahuta is not the oldest. That would be Te Matua, and at somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 years old, it is called the Father of the Forest. Cape Reinga is a beautiful spot, truly at the end of New Zealand, at its extreme northern tip. The Tasman Sea and the South Pacific Ocean meet here in a clash of waves. Contrary to what you'd expect, this is not a tourist-driven spot. This place has deep spiritual significance to the Maori. According to oral history, from a gnarled tree standing here for over 800 years is where the spirits of deceased Maori leap into the ocean to return to their ancestral homeland. Completed in 1941, the Cape Reinga Lighthouse was the last watched lighthouse to be built in New Zealand. It became automated in 1987 and the keeper left. The structure stands about 540 feet above sea level and its beacon can be seen nearly 22 miles out at sea. If you look closer, you can see the division line of the Tasman Sea's turquoise water clashing with the Pacific Ocean's darker blue waves. Part of what fueled the influx of European settlers to New Zealand was the 1852 discovery of gold in them there hills. The Martha Hill Mine, named after a prospector's sister, was once the most productive gold mine ever in the country. 5.6 million ounces of gold and 38.4 million ounces of silver were taken from the ground by the time the mine closed in 1952, the result of economic, political, and natural factors. It was considered one of the most important producers in the world. In the 1970s and early 1980s, the price of gold rebounded, leading to a resurgence of the gold mining industry in New Zealand, which continues today, but with a much lesser output than in its heyday. Nearby, we come to the region known as the Bay of Plenty, so deemed by Captain Cook in 1769 for its abundance of needed supplies and food. The city of Rotorua epitomizes the concept of plenty. There's a wild and diverse profusion of sights and things to do in what is considered the heart of the North Island. No matter what your interest is, you'll find it in Rotorua. Do you like geysers? They're here. Prefer lakes? Got 18 of them. Maybe your fancy is eerie, bubbling mud pits. Got you covered. Maori history? Check. Stunning street art? Check. Adorably cute tiny birds? Say hello to the kiwi. Want to throw yourself into a big plastic bubble and bounce your way down a hill? Zorbing was invented here. Rotorua is the volcanic heartland of New Zealand. According to legend, an ancient leader nearly froze to death climbing a nearby mountain when he called upon the gods to save him. His sisters, the goddesses of fire, sent fire demons to help him. These created a trail of volcanoes and an underground geothermal path that warmed him. Early exploring tribes from East Polynesia were drawn to the region by the plumes of white rising out of the land, and that's what prompted them to call it the land of the long white cloud. At the nearby town of Tipuia, volcanic activity can still be experienced today close up. Nicknamed a geothermal wonderland, the 150-acre park has boiling mud pools, silica terraces, and steaming geysers, including the Pohuta geyser, which can spurt up to more than 98 feet high. It is the largest geyser in the southern hemisphere and bursts into life up to 20 times a day. There is a price to pay to witness this awesome show by nature, though, and it's not just the park entry fee. A strong smell of sulfur pervades the area, which was first inhabited by the Maori in the 14th century. Tribes used the boiling volcanic pools for cooking and heating their houses, naturally by building their houses on the warm soil. Today's crock pot cooking is just a modernized version of an old Maori technique, minus the messy pots and electricity. One of Tipuia's greatest draws is its new Kiwi Conservation Center, where New Zealand's national symbol, the tiny kiwi bird, can be enjoyed in a specially lit environment. Kiwi are flightless birds endemic to New Zealand. At around the size of a domestic chicken, kiwi are by far the smallest living flightless birds. Oddly, they lay the largest egg in relation to their body size of any species of bird in the world. The association between the bird and people of New Zealand is so strong that the term kiwi is used all over the world to refer to the human residents as well. Rounding out the experience at Tipuia are demonstrations by traditional carvers and weavers at the National Arts and Crafts Institute Center. Maori art is based almost entirely on the human form, the body, and the spirit of their ancestors, which is ever present in their buildings. The center was set up in the 1963 to revive the dying art of native wood carving. On the shores of Rotorua is the iconic bathhouse, New Zealand's most photographed building. It was an early exercise in business and marketing by the newly created Department of Tourist and Health Resorts in 1907. The group decided to capitalize on the area's natural geologic attributes and hit on the idea of tempting wealthy Northern Hemisphere patrons to travel far from home to the Great South Seas Spa. Opening its doors in 1908, the bathhouse was designed along the lines of a European spa, with attractive half-timbered facades, gables, towers, a grand staircase, and luxurious treatment facilities. Doctors sent their patients halfway across the world to take the cure in the mineral-rich thermal springs for complaints like arthritis, lumbago, and rheumatism. At its height, the spa gave 60 to 80,000 baths annually and about 30,000 special treatments. Some of those special treatments would seem somewhat bizarre today and included combining water and electricity in a way that you really shouldn't. This beautiful Elizabethan structure now houses a museum of art and history, an outstanding museum with multimedia displays and a wealth of artifacts that bring to life the story of the region's geography, history, and people. A great feature of the already beautiful building is the viewing platform on the roof that looks out over the surrounding government gardens and lake. On a much lighter note, and for a more rollicking experience, you can dive into a giant inflatable ball and go bouncing down a hill in the sport called zorbing. Reportedly, the idea came to a French architect in the 1970s, and although he got some patents for the design of something in which humans could mimic a hamster running around inside a plastic ball, it didn't catch on commercially. In the 1980s, a British group called the Dangerous Sports Club built a 75-foot sphere with 2 deck chairs inside to roll around in. It never gained the traction of another harebrained idea they'd had, the bungee jump, and so they dropped it. In 1994, 2 New Zealanders revived and improved on the concept and developed an inflatable plastic sphere. With clever marketing, this time the Zorb took off. There's even an aqua version. You can see a picture of a water zorber on the Spain page of my website. The sport is as much fun just to watch as I expect it is to tumble in. Art in New Zealand isn't relegated solely to museums. It's everywhere. These are just some of the dozens of murals scattered around Rotorua. According to the region's Lakes Council, public art as a way of enhancing the city's spaces and making them more vibrant and inviting is what they are supporting. Putting their money where their mouth is, in 2013, the council set a policy that 1% of its annual capital projects budget was to be set aside to fund public art. In addition to the murals, sculptures, and performances and even events have been sponsored. At the extreme southern tip of the North Island is the island country's national capital, Wellington, the southernmost capital in the world. And it's one where you have to hold on to your hat. As a matter of scientific fact, it is the windiest city on Earth with average speeds of up to 16 miles per hour. Between Wellington and the South Island is Cook Strait, about 14 miles wide at its narrowest. A ferry ride between the 2 islands takes about 3.5 hours. In addition to being the country's political capital, Wellington is also considered its cultural capital and has an abundance of museums. For a great view of the city and to get oriented, take a ride on the Wellington cable car. Fortunately, not one of those that dangles from cables, given that reputation for wind, but more the funicular railway tram kind that takes riders on an extraordinary trip up above the city. First proposed in 1889, work didn't start for another decade, and in 1902, the first ride took off. You get a hint, this isn't just your run-of-the-mill tram right from the starting base at Lambton Quay in the heart of the Wellington shopping district. The vibrant rainbow mural, finished in 2018, represents, according to the artist, the cable car as a magical, moving, connective path through the continuum of time from history to current day and beyond. It certainly does seem like a magical tour, as riders go up about 400 feet above the city in just 5 minutes. Along the way, it passes over 3 bridges and through 3 tunnels, 2 of them being an experience in themselves, brightening up the exteriors with intensive light shows that are colorful and pulsating. Each station on the route offers something different, from a playground at the Salamanca stop to the Clifton Street station's stunning mural depicting the transition of the cable car. The timeline depicted runs from about 1902 to 2016, transitioning from travelers in period dress in black and white to color, along with various changes in the cable car, which has been refurbished and modernized repeatedly over the years. At the cable car's last stop, you'll find this panoramic view, along with a cable car museum, botanic garden, observatory, and the country's parliament building, all within a short walk. One of the more unique spots nearby, just a free 5-minute shuttle ride from the cable car, is Zealandia, the world's first fully fenced urban eco-sanctuary. Zealandia is truly a New Zealand-only experience, an ambitious conservation plan like in no other country. More than 500 acres of land were fenced to create an urban eco-sanctuary with the goal of returning the region back to its pre-human state, with an exceptionally long-range plan, one expected to be accomplished over the next 500 years. In the early 1990s, sanctuary founder Jim Lynch envisioned a pest-proof environment in the heart of Wellington. The result was Zealandia. A mesh barrier encircles it and keeps out rodents, stoats, weasels, and more that would threaten the rare species nurtured within. More than 20 classes of native wildlife have been reintroduced, including the hihi, one of the country's rarest birds that was nearly extinct, but now more than 1,000 chicks have hatched in the sanctuary. Before man landed on its shores, New Zealand was unique as a nearly mammal-free environment. The isolated species living there were affected dramatically around 800 years ago when humans from Polynesia settled in New Zealand. Not long afterwards, the first Europeans arrived, and between the two populations, they cleared vast tracts of land and introduced pests and pets that preyed on the vulnerable natural residents. In Zealandia, they are again thriving, and some include these guys. On the left, we have a tuatara, a rare medium-sized reptile considered a living fossil. The duck in the bottom middle is a rare native brown teal with a thin white eye ring. It's about half the size of a mallard and is one of New Zealand's most nationally endangered species of waterfowl. In the lower right is a small endemic white-head songbird, often heard before seen. The population had been in decline, but now it is one of the most commonly spotted birds in the sanctuary. In the upper right is a red-beaked flightless bird that loves swampy environments. And then the park is also home to some 130 wild little spotted kiwi. The park can be explored over nearly 5 miles of trail, sectioned off for various lengths and challenges, or you can go about by cruising part of it on an electric boat up the lake. Named by Time magazine as one of the 100th greatest places in the world, the article states the sanctuary is a must-visit, pest-proof urban island and the closest you'll ever find to being in New Zealand before humans were here. Also garnering high marks from the travel industry is the Te Papa Museum in Wellington. Lonely Planet places it as one of their top 500 places on Earth, and it's also one of TripAdvisor's top 25 museums in the world. In a sprawling 6-story concrete building designed in 1998 to withstand a 1 in 2,000 year earthquake event, the country and its people's history are played out in dramatic multimedia and cutting-edge interactive exhibitions, from its geologic inception to modern day. The building itself is architecturally symbolic. Its north face overlooks the harbor, where bluff-like walls embrace nature, the sea, the hills, and sky. The museum's south face greets the city with its vibrantly colored panels and grid-like spaces that reflect the patterns of European settlement. In between, natural and urban concepts are represented, as well as the nation's bicultural identity of native Maori and European pakeha. A centerpiece exhibit is this communal meeting place of the native Maoris and a beautiful meeting house. Traditional and modern stories are told through its design. The bright and beautiful colors are the same as those their ancestors would have seen in their own environment, in flora and fauna, native birds, clay and mud, rock, the rays of the sun, and rainbows. The exhibit is named after a place in the heavens where the Maori gods are said to meet in peace to discuss and settle issues. Elsewhere in the museum, various forces of nature can be experienced. You could be shaken down to your toes when you enter the realm of the god of volcanoes and earthquakes and explore the geological forces that shape the land in the shaky quake house, or step into an outsized nest and be immersed in birdsong. For children, there is the all-time favorite exhibit, the colossal squid. The 14-foot-long, 1,000-pound squid, the only colossal squid on display in the world, is one of the most visited exhibits, especially by the kids. Another New Zealand spot popular among children of all ages is the place known as Hobbiton in Northland's midsection. As a fan of J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings series and later the Hobbit movies, the Shire of Middle-earth is a truly special place to visit. Nestled in the 12-acre movie set are little hobbit houses, the Green Dragon Inn, the lake, and the bridge as seen in the opening minutes of the 2001 film The Fellowship of the Ring. Visitors can bend down and enter Bilbo Baggins' home. Then, take a look out on the village. Roaming the grounds are adorable sheep, major residents of the island nation. More than 13.5 million live on the North Island alone. Compare that to the roughly 4 million humans there, more than 3 times the population. I hope you've enjoyed sharing one of my bucket list destinations and agree that it should be my next stop. I like to end all of my programs with the words of Dr. Seuss. Sometimes you don't appreciate the moment until it becomes a memory. And I like to add to that to always remember to celebrate the moments and treasure the memories. If you have any questions about this program, email me or use the contact page on my website. Of course, I also invite you to visit my website to see my already visited European destinations. When libraries are again offering in-person presentations, you can check my programs tab to see where I'll be. Until then, visit your library site for more video vacations by Savvy Sightseer. Ta!